Alright, so we're about to jump into the first round of the Pokemon video game Midseason Showdown in Independence, Missouri at Game Cafe. This first round we have John Masters, who won the Premier Challenge yesterday at the same venue, playing against Matthew Carter, known as Matt J on Nugget Bridge, and I don't know if he's on Trainer Tower now or not. But so Matt J is one of the old guard players. He's been playing for a long time from St. Louis. So this is going to be a really exciting match, and I'm pretty excited to see what we got. So on the left, you see John's team, and he's using Persian, Xurkitree, Tapu, Bulu, Salamence, Ninetales, Alolan form, and Metagross. And this is going against Matthew Carter's Mimikyu, Groudon, Pheromosa, Butterfree, Arcanine, and Salazzle. Now, both of these players have some Pokemon that we don't see super often. Xurkitree is sort of a new rising threat. It saw a lot of success at Worlds, and I've heard from the players that played John yesterday that he's been able to support it really well with the protection from Earthquake that Tapu Bulu gives it thanks to that grassy terrain. Coupled with Ninetales' speed control in Icy Wind, as well as Aurora Veil, giving it the ability to give some extra bulk to the Xurkitree to make it last a lot longer. On the other side of the field, though, I'm sure everyone wants to talk about that Butterfree that we're seeing. Butterfree has a lot of options that it can use. It does have Compound Eyes with Sleep Powder, giving it 97% accurate Sleep Powders, which can be a very powerful option, as well as having Rage Powder to redirect attacks. You can fire off very accurate Hurricanes, which can give surprising damage, as well as being one of the few Pokemon that is going to be able to resist Garchomp's Ground-type moves, which is probably why Matt Carter chose to utilize it on his team today. So in the leads, we see John with Persian and Ninetales up against Matt's Pheromosa and Butterfree. So John threatens the Fake Out here, and so he can immobilize one Pokemon, and he does go right for that Fake Out into the Butterfree, preventing any sort of redirection, and Matt goes straight on the offensive, hitting that Ninetales with a Poison Jab, getting an attack boost on the Pheromosa, and so that's going to give him a lot of power for Pheromosa to steamroll, and that's just a really good turn for Matt for the turn one, picking up a quick KO and taking almost no damage himself. And that's also going to help because Pheromosa gets an attack boost. It is going to give it just a lot of attacking power in general. It already has a really high attack stat. It'll be probably around 204, I believe, when I've used Pheromosa myself. So that's going to boost it up quite a bit, an extra 50%. So now John brings in his Xurkitree, which does have a massive special attack stat and is going to be able to deal a lot of damage if it can get an attack off. It does also threaten. It could use a Tail Glow to boost its already astronomical special attack stat even higher. So we do see that it survives the +1 Poison Jab, which is going to be really crucial here because now it's going to allow Xurkitree to fire off an attack, as John also Parting Shots, so that's going to drop the attack and special attack of the Pheromosa and allows him to bring in his own Salamence, which is going to further lower Pheromosa's attack and is in a good position. So Xurkitree does go for the Tail Glow. That's going to give it +3 special attack, and Butterfree goes for the Sleep Powder. So even though Xurkitree got its boosted attack, it's going to be taking a nap and will be unable to do anything on this next turn. One bit of information that we do gain here is the fact that Pheromosa went for the Poison Jab rather than one of its same type attack boosted moves could indicate that it is locked into Poison Jab due to a Choice Band or even a Choice Scarf. I don't personally know my damage calcs well enough to be confident making that call right away. But it's certainly something we could see. I would have expected to see a fighting type attack that would get the same type attack bonus. And it does look like the Pheromosa is going to continue going for poison jabs, as Butterfree is forced to take a flamethrower, and that's going to pick up a KO. Also notable information on the previous turn is that Xurkitree ate its Pinch Berry, restoring quite a bit of health, and so you can definitely see that it's going to potentially be a very bulky Pokemon capable of staying on the field for a long amount of time, and that definitely helped it out. It helped it survive this extra turn, so if it gets a Wake Up, it will have a chance to start dealing some damage with that +3 attack, or special attack that it's at. As Matt brings in his Garchomp, which threatens both of the Pokemon on John's side of the field. It could potentially Earthquake, it could potentially Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw is not the most common move on Garchomps this season, but certainly something that could be a threat. And so Pheromosa is able to pick up the KO on that Xurkitree. That puts its attack back at neutral as the Salamence goes for the Draco Meteor into Garchomp. The Draco Meteor obviously not connecting due to Garchomp's Protect. So now John will be bringing back in his Persian, which again threatens Fake Out, which is really important because Matt's Garchomp has already burned its Protect, so it's not going to be able to protect to ward off the Fake Out, which could potentially give John a chance to KO that Garchomp fairly easily. So Matt, reading that threat, does choose to preserve his Garchomp, give it another chance at life later on, and brings in his Arcanine as John goes for the Fake Out into what was the Garchomp slot, and a Flamethrower into the Pheromosa. So that was a pretty solid turn on John's part. He recognized that Pheromosa wasn't going to be able to deal enough damage to KO anything, and that he wanted to get it off of the field, and going for the Fake Out on the other side in order to make sure that the Garchomp couldn't deal any damage. So Garchomp comes back in. We've seen Protect, so it's likely that it's not a choice version, so it will most likely be slower than this Persian, but it will be faster and could potentially finish off that Salamence with either a Dragon Claw or a potential Rock Slide. As Arcanine goes for the Extreme Speed into the Salamence, but it's just not quite enough to pick up the KO. And Salamence goes for a Draco Meteor into Garchomp's Protect. So now Salamence is in range to get KO'd by this next Extreme Speed from Arcanine, and that'll leave Garchomp free and safe from Salamence to deal some damage to Persian. Persian does have Foul Play, so even though it doesn't have a whole lot of attacking stats on its own, it is going to be able to deal quite a bit of damage to the Garchomp by using Garchomp's own very high attack stat. So yeah, Matt goes ahead and takes the Extreme Speed into Salamence, scores a critical hit that didn't matter given the damage that he was able to deal earlier. And the Foul Play goes into Arcanine, dealing around 30% as Garchomp busts that Z ground. It's going to go for the Tectonic Rage into Persian. Now Persian usually carries the ability Fur Coat, which doubles its defense, so it's going to be very bulky and likely able to take this attack very well, but it's still good to fire off some strong damage into it. All right, belay my last. The Tectonic Rage was able to KO that Persian from nearly full. That's definitely not something I expected to see, and some good information for Matt to keep in mind going forward into games 2 and potentially game 3, knowing that he will be able to get rid of that Persian with the Tectonic Rage. But he'll also have to be careful because he might want to preserve Tectonic Rage for hitting either Xurkitree or Metagross if grassy terrain is active, because Tectonic Rage will not be weakened by grassy terrain, but the regular non-Z move Earthquake will be. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of changes John decides to make. Not having a focus sash on his own Ninetales was really interesting, and it did allow Matt to pick up the KO with Poison Jab straight away without Ninetales being able to do anything. Poison Jab is certainly very threatening to his Tapu Bulu as well, which could be a key member for helping make sure Xurkitree is able to stick around long enough to deal damage with its very high attack stat. So both players seem to have a pretty good idea of what they want to do, jumping into game 2 really quickly. So Matt going ahead, sticking with that Butterfree, deciding that the threat of sleep was definitely something that was very worthwhile, that he wants to keep around. So this being Butterfree and Salazzle versus John deciding that the leads that he used were fine, he just needs to maybe play them a little bit differently this time around. So again, with Persian on the field, John does threaten Fake Out. However, Salazzle also threatens Fake Out, and it does reach base 117 speed, I believe. So its Fake Out will move before Persian's. So he certainly has the option to either try and prevent Persian's Fake Out by faking it out, or just trading Fake Outs, leaving a dead turn for both players. And it does look like he doesn't want to deal with Persian's Fake Out, and so he goes for the Fake Out into Persian, and does show that he is Life Orb Salazzle, taking that Life Orb recoil. And Butterfree goes for the Sleep Powder into the Ninetales, but Ninetales was able to set up its Aurora Veil this turn, so that is going to help John's team maintain quite a bit of bulk, because it's going to reduce the damage from both physical and special attacks by around 30%, which really helps bulk up his team quite a bit. So Ninetales hasn't taken a turn of sleep. It's going to be unable to move this turn, but it has at least done something in this game. So it's not complete dead weight, not just an easy KO fodder like it was last game. So John deciding he doesn't want his Ninetales to just take damage and do nothing on the field. Switches it out for Xurkitree, which takes just shy of 50%, as well as getting poisoned on a 30% chance to poison from Sludge Bomb, as Persian goes for the taunt into Butterfree. And so Butterfree was unable to use, I believe it was Sleep Powder that went really quickly, and I didn't quite see the move that it went for. So the important thing here is, given the damage of the previous turn's Sludge Bomb, after Hail and Poison, this next Sludge Bomb actually might be enough to KO that Xurkitree. So John might want to protect, that way he can take another turn of Poison and Hail damage to get down to the range where it will activate the Pinch Berry and help restore some of the health. And it'll be interesting to see what Butterfree chooses to do. Being on the field with no already taunted, most of what it does is support moves, so it could be in a really unhealthy spot here as well. However, Matt decides to leave it on the field, and he goes for the Sludge Bomb into the protective Xurkitree, while Persian goes for the Parting Shot out of to get out of this off the field, and it also lowers the special attack and attack of Salazzle. John deciding to bring back in his Ninetales as Butterfree goes for the Air Slash, dealing about 20% or so. So the important thing here on this turn is that after lowering the special attack of Salazzle, that once this Pinch Berry is activated, its next Sludge Bomb isn't going to be enough to KO the Xurkitree, giving it a turn to deal some damage. However, Matt does still threaten to deal some damage to that Xurkitree, and being poisoned, it is still going to be on a little bit of a timer, as well as just having his Butterfree on the field, going to be able to deal some damage with Air Slash. It looked like, yeah, around 20% was what it dealt to the Ninetales. So certainly respectable chip damage, putting things in range for other hits later. As Salazzle, instead of the Sludge Bomb, goes for the Overheat, but is not quite enough to pick up the KO. And the Ninetales burns its first turn of sleep. It still hadn't done so, so not surprised to see it taking a nap there. And the Salazzle does go down to a Thunderbolt from Xurkitree, and Xurkitree is going to get a special attack boost thanks to Beast Boost. However, it looks like it's not going to be able to make use of that Beast Boost because it will be going down to hail damage coupled with the poison damage. So there's a trade there, trading Salazzle for Xurkitree, and allowing Ninetales to burn one of its turns of sleep. So it does have a chance to wake up this turn, and obviously I imagine John is really hoping that that's the case. So now Matt decides to go ahead and bring in his own Pheromosa. However, John again is threatening Fake Out with his Persian. So if he can Fake Out the Pheromosa and get this turn 1 Wake Up on his Ninetales, then he would have been in a really good position. However, he was unable to do so, and since the taunt has worn off on Butterfree, John is able, or Matt rather, excuse me, is able to set up a Tailwind. So the Tailwind's not going to help out Pheromosa too much. It's already a very fast Pokemon, hitting 151 base speed, but it does help Butterfree move before that Persian, being able to put it to sleep before Butterfree can be taunted. So that's definitely a good turn for John, or for Matt there, and just really unfortunate for John that his Ninetales didn't wake up. So John deciding, you know what, I don't want my Ninetales getting KO'd right this minute, goes ahead and switches it out for his Salamence, and so Salamence is able to intimidate the Pheromosa as well as resist the high jump kick that went into it, so it only takes about 40% damage from that. So that's a really good switch on John's part, actually less than 40%. So Salamence was able to take that high jump kick really well. However, now Matt will be firing off the high jump kick into the Persian, and it is enough to pick up the KO. Giving the attack Beast Boost, setting Pheromosa back at neutral attack after the Intimidate from Salamence. And so Salamence burns its first turn of sleep right there. It does have the potential to wake up next turn. As Ninetales comes back onto the field, setting that hail one more time. So one thing Matt does want to be careful here is if the Ninetales wakes up on a Protect, if he fires off the high jump kick into that Protect, he's going to be taking a lot of recoil. And as we saw, the damage that High Jump Kick was dealing to the Salamence wasn't really a lot. It's going to be a little bit more thanks to the boosted attack stat from the Beast Boost after picking up a KO. But he'll definitely probably want a different Pokemon to be able to deal damage to that Salamence. So the High Jump Kick comes out into the Ninetales, picking up the KO, and that puts Pheromosa at +1 attack now, as Air Slash deals almost as much damage to the Salamence as the original High Jump Kick did. Salamence does get the first turn Wake Up and is able to fire off a Flamethrower into the Pheromosa, picking up the KO. And so this is bringing it down to a 2v1. Tailwind and Aurora Veil both end this turn, so Salamence is no longer protected by the extra bulk of Aurora Veil. But it will be faster than the opponent's Butterfree, which can definitely give it an advantage. So Matt bringing in his Garchomp. As we saw last game, the Garchomp is using the Groundium Z to fire off Tectonic Rage, so it will be interesting what... oh, and Matt does have the Dragon Claw, which is going to be enough to pick up the KO onto Salamence and cleans this game, finishes this game, and also gives Matt the set, winning this set 2-1. So that's a good first win for Matt. I'm sure he's really pleased with the way his team worked, and he also should be pretty pleased to have taken a game off of one of the better players in the Kansas City area. So that's a fun first set, and we'll be back for round 2 when it comes up.